Spring, a series of events and protests that profoundly changed the Middle East and North Africa region. But how did it start? It all began in late 2010 in Tunisia when a fruit seller, Mohamed Bouazizi, set himself on fire after police took his cart and weighing scale for operating without a license. A radical form of protest which resulted in many people taking to the streets as a cry out against corruption, oppression, and unemployment in their country. Dozens were killed and injured, and this became known as the Jasmine Revolution. In an attempt to take back control, the then President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali declared a state of emergency and promised new elections within 6 months. But that didn't work. Many had lost hope in the president who had already been in power for 24 years, so armed officials and other politicians took power from him. As he was forced to flee his country to Saudi Arabia, the uprisings didn't stop there. The anger began to spread. Inspired by the Tunisian people's defiance, many in other countries took to the streets to protest against authoritarian governments in their own nations. Protests grew in other countries including Syria, Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt, where President Hosni Mubarak, who had been in power for 30 years, was also forced out of office. These acts of defiance by the people is what became known as the Arab Spring. But what first started off as peaceful pro-democracy protests turned into civil wars in Libya, Syria, and Yemen, displacing and killing millions of people. Tunisia did, however, experience a more peaceful transition and held its first democratic parliamentary elections in 2011.
The Arab Spring had a harsh influence on the surrounding area, resulting in important shifts in the region's political, social and economic system. It brought to light the effectiveness of grassroots movement, social media and citizen journalism in mobilizing large groups of people and organizing protests. It also brought to light the deeply ingrained socio-political difficulty that Arab nations are currently confronted with, as well as a difficult nature of making transition from authority to democratic governance. Although originally there was optimism that democratic change and constructive change would result from the Arab Spring, the years that followed have been discouraged by a variety of results.
The first one is the socio-economic complaint. Socio-economic complaint that occur among the population of Arab countries are among the main cause of the Arab Spring. It may cause which is high unemployment and also limited economy. Many Arab countries have large population, especially among young people. This gives rise to the fact that many people fail to find a meaningless job and despite having a high level of education. In addition, there are ramping corruption and corruption, which lead to an unequal distribution of power and money. This matter greatly cause the dissatisfaction among the people due to the rampant corruption factors, while the majority of the citizens struggle to do work but the ruling elite only watching. Next, this table shows the provided evidence that government mismanagement in the Arab world have not only worsened in the past 10 years but has also worsened over time. This table shows that the Turkey has the highest level of corruption following by the Kuwait and Lebanon. This gives the sense that corruption in this country has existed for a long time. So So, demography and youth ageism are the second factor of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring is heavily influenced by the youth population. Young people make up the majority of the population in the area, and they are often better connected and educated than previous generation. The desire for a better future and the end to political persecution make young people a powerful force in the movement for change. Youth emerge as a force for change because of their frustration with few economic prospects. With effective use of social media channel for effective mobilization have protests gain traction. This could start widespread support for the protest. So in this table show that the ratio of the young people who have graduated but cannot find a job. This show that the region has the highest ever rate of youth unemployment worldwide, which is with Tunisia leading the pack with 42% of young people actively looking for work. For example, young men have few career options and young women almost none. And the inverse relationship between the education and the employment is a notable aspect.
One of the significant shortcomings of the Arab Spring was the failure to achieve sufficient provision of public goods and ensure equality in the term aftermath of uprising. Demonstrations were motivated by the demand for political reform and more freedom, but there was also an underlying hope that living collectivisms, social welfare and economic possibility would improve. In a number of cases, however, the transitional administration that emerged following the collapse of authoritarian regimes struggled to meet this expectation. The transition process was frequently unstable and marked by political instability, which hindered the implementation of effective governance and policy. In some instances, the provision of essential commodities such as to access education, healthcare, pure water, and infrastructure remained inadequate or even declined. In addition, there was unequal distribution of resources and opportunity, which exacerbated economic and social gap. Initially, the Arab Spring inspired optimism for more inclusive society. However, in reality, the transition encountered numerous obstacles in confronting entrenched socio-economic disparities. The factors of Arab Spring is the dynamic of public empowerment and its struggle. The Arab Spring was marked by intensive hunger of public empowerment and the struggle to obtain it. The disturbances were fueled by a pervasive feeling of political powerlessness and a demand for increased participation in decision-making process. During the protest, the Arab population, especially the young, utilized a variety of methods to express their grievances and demand change. Social media platform played a vital role in organizing and mobilizing individuals, media and facility dissemination of information and ideas. This resulted in a remarkable increase of public consciousness, political cognizance, and a sense of freedom among ordinary citizens. For example, as a pupil challenger the long-lasting dominance of authoritarian regimes, the Arab Spring represented a significant shift in the power balance.
First consequences of Arab Spring is removal of the authoritarian rulers from Tunis, Libya and Egypt. The majority of the Middle Eastern nations were governed by totalitarian regimes. Some of them have been in power for many years. The departure of this long-standing autocrat was the main result of Arab Spring. NATO also attacked the nation under pretext of defending civilian life and those defending democracy against the dictatorial government. After Libya, the movement that originated in Tunis made its way to Egypt. At the time, Hosni Mubarak was in charge of Egypt. The 31st of January was observed as National Police Day in Egypt, and many Egyptians come to protest the day. For example, after the 2011 Arab Spring upheaval, only Tunisia was able to establish a long-lasting democratic government. But under President Said, Tunisia seems to be returning to an autocratic system. The nation has been downgraded from slow democracy to hybrid regime in the EIU Democracy Index for 2021, which show an overall decrease of 21 place in the ranking. Second consequence is impact on the surrounding state. The ruler of Middle Eastern states were forced to take either a reactive or proactive stance after the long-reigning authoritarian President of Egypt Hosni Mubarak was forced to resign by the people of Tahrir Square. By the Arab Revolution of 2011, we were in a full force. The Arab world never seems more united. Leaders from Saudi Arabia and Morocco chose a proactive stance. Saudi Shah King Abdullah issued a financial package worth $36 million to help Saudi households. State policy in the MENA area is still ignore social, economic, and political injustice, which could once more face the way of unrest. Revolt in 2011 led to those in 2019, which will evolve into a new wave of protests that may be less pacific and civil than those of 2011 and 2019. For example, in 2012, the area economic recovery showed considerably, only somewhat from the usual area GDP growth amounted to 2.4%, although GDP growth will per up and reach 3.5% in 2013. It will be below the rate of growth experienced prior to liberation. Political unrest causes significant production loss.
In positive sides, one of the advantages of the Arab Spring is it pushed and boosts the democratic process for greater democracy among Arab countries. It is because over the past 3 decades, education levels have improved significantly in the Middle Eastern and North African states. For instance, Tunisia held free and fair elections and enacted a new constitution that upheld democratic ideals. The revolutions in other Arab countries have failed 10 years after the Arab Spring uprising got their start in Tunisia with a lone street vendors protest. Only Tunisia has maintained a tenuous form of democracy. In the Arab world, Tunisia's strong and resilient democratic experience is essentially unique. Additionally, a survey of the general public's perception of Tunisia's democracy revealed that the majority of respondents thought the nation had some flaws but was still a democracy. The graph here illustrates Tunisia's democracy index from 2008 to 2022. Next, create regional cooperation among Arab countries. It is mean the Arab Spring increased regional cooperation and Arab nationalism, with residents of various nations supporting each other's campaigns for greater democracy and human rights. For instance, the state of regionalism in the Arab Middle East will be emphasized, particularly for the post-Arab Spring regionalism. The Middle East was initially framed by strategic considerations and military concerns. For example, due to the positive movement of the regional cooperation among the Arab countries, the International Telecommunications Union created the Digital Opportunity Index to illustrate ICT opportunity, infrastructure, and utilization by nation. With the rapid adoption of mobile phones starting in 2005, this figure here clearly demonstrates the ability of mobile infrastructure to be established quickly and competitively, which is The mobile subscriptions per 100 residents among 2000 until 2011. Early in the decade, mobile phone use was comparable across the 5 nations, but in the middle of the decade, Egypt, Libya and Tunisia experienced a rapid uptick.
As a conclusion, the Arab Spring was an important and transformative event in the Arab world history. It was participated by a combination of factors including pervasive discontent, political representation, economic difficulty, corruption and lack of social justice. It will show how powerful grassroots organizations, social media and citizen action can be when it comes to getting people together and planning large-scale protests. The Arab Spring also showed the problem that come with moving from a dictatorship to democracy, such as the need for institutions that are open to everyone, the rule of law and the protection of minority rights. It shows the conflict between security and change and how hard it is to deal with the different political and regulators in the area. The Arab Spring effect are still being felt in the Arab world. It has led to ongoing argument and talk about government, human rights, social justice and the role of outside players in the world. The Arab Spring will have an effect on countries for years to come as they go through the difficult process of political, social and economic change.